Racist woman destroyed the dress thinking it was just a black waitress. Her millionaire husband saw it, and the red wine splattered across the white fabric like blood on fresh snow. Victoria Hartwell watched her handiwork with cruel satisfaction as the young waitress desperately tried to wipe the liquid from her skirt. "Oops," Victoria murmured with a feigned innocence that fooled no one. Her smile gleamed like a diamond and cut just as deep. "What a pity that people like you don't know how to move properly in civilized settings." The Boston Annual Charity Gala was the crown jewel of the city's social calendar, a night when the East Coast elite, dressed in shimmering fabrics and hollow virtue, Austrian crystals hung from the vaulted ceiling like frozen chandeliers of arrogance. Imported orchids perfumed the air, masking the stench of hypocrisy. A string quartet performed softly in the corner, each note a delicate lie to accompany the glittering deceit of wealth. Jasmine Washington, only 24, had never imagined that one evening of waitressing would place her at the heart of a storm that would upend lives. She had taken the extra shift to cover her last semester's tuition at Harvard Business School, balancing dreams and debt with the grace of a woman who'd known struggle since childhood. Her natural curls were tied neatly in a bun, her posture straight, her smile polite. She carried trays the way she carried her life, steady hands hiding the tremor of exhaustion. Victoria Hartwell, by contrast, embodied inherited privilege. The wife of real estate tycoon Robert Hartwell, she had turned her life into a stage play of self-importance, charity luncheons, designer boutiques, and endless spa retreats disguised as philanthropy. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Jasmine said calmly, bending to gather the shards of the glass Victoria had accidentally dropped. "I'll have it cleaned right away." "Don't worry about it," Victoria replied loudly enough to attract nearby attention. "Accidents are common when one hires this kind of people for refined events." The venom in her words dripped into the air like acid. Conversations around them slowed, eyes turned, and the quiet music seemed to grow fainter beneath the hum of scandal. Jasmine could feel the gazes, curious, embarrassed, entertained. A free show for the privileged, a public shaming served with champagne. Victoria smiled, savoring the attention. "Perhaps the organizers should consider more qualified staff next year," she continued dramatically. "People who naturally understand decorum." What Victoria didn't realize was that her cruelty was being absorbed by Jasmine with the patience of someone who had learned long ago how to survive storms. Raised on Chicago's South Side by a single mother who worked 3 jobs, Jasmine knew that true strength was silent. It didn't shout. It endured. It watched. "Of course, ma'am," Jasmine replied with serenity, her tone controlled, her dignity untouchable. Victoria frowned. She didn't like calm victims, only broken ones. As Jasmine retreated toward the kitchen, she passed the head table. There sat an elegant, silver-haired man, Robert Hartwell, watching everything with an expression that betrayed quiet conflict. When their eyes met, something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, respect, perhaps even remorse. Robert had built his empire by observing people when they thought no one noticed. And in that moment, watching his wife humiliate a working woman, he saw the truth laid bare. The rot beneath his own wealth. The cruelty disguised as class. In the kitchen, Jasmine finally allowed her hands to tremble. She discarded the shards and took a deep breath. Only 20 minutes ago, she had been just another student working a part-time job. Now something had shifted. A determination ignited. Subtle but fierce. She didn't yet know that this night, born from humiliation, would mark the beginning of her transformation. When she returned to the hall, Victoria was surrounded by her usual entourage. Margaret Wellington, heir to a pharmaceutical empire, Caroline Pierce, the gossip columnist, and other women whose laughter sounded like broken glass. "Did you see that?" Victoria announced dramatically, sipping champagne. "The audacity of some people to infiltrate our events. Honestly, who screens the staff?" Margaret tittered. "Darling, you're absolutely right. I had to dismiss a maid last week for questioning my cleaning methods. Boundaries must be maintained." Their laughter blended with the clinking of glasses. Symphony of cruelty. Jasmine approached to replace a tray, their eyes following her like predators circling prey. "Imagine," Victoria said loudly, "having to work at events like this." "At least she knows her place." Jasmine kept her expression neutral, though her pulse quickened. Every insult was a note in a song she had heard her entire life, but tonight, she was recording every measure, literally. Beneath the crisp folds of her uniform, a small digital recorder blinked silently. Victoria smirked as Jasmine passed. "Anyway, ladies," she said, her tone dripping condescension, "we shouldn't be too harsh. Not everyone is fortunate enough to be born with a silver spoon." If only she knew that Jasmine had graduated summa cum laude in economics, had translated legal documents for her mother at age 12, and had financed her siblings' education before 21. Margaret decided to add her own cruelty. "Dear," she said to Jasmine, "workers should remain discreet, don't you think? Avoid drawing attention." "Yes, ma'am," Jasmine replied steadily, meeting her eyes. "I understand perfectly." Something in her tone, a quiet authority, unsettled Margaret. Victoria, irritated by her friend's hesitation, rose from her chair. "Perhaps we should have a quick lesson in proper etiquette." "You can read, can't you?" The words sliced through the air. Conversations nearby halted. Even the violinist hesitated on a note. "Yes, ma'am," Jasmine said evenly. "I read perfectly well." Victoria laughed, brittle and sharp. "Excellent! Then perhaps you could read tonight's menu aloud, just to make sure the staff is familiar with what we're serving. It was a trap. A public spectacle designed to humiliate." Robert's jaw tightened. He recognized the cruelty in his wife's performance, and the quiet power in Jasmine's restraint. Jasmine took the menu, glanced at it briefly, and then began to read, her voice soft yet commanding, her French flawless. Amuse-bouche de crabe à la gelée de Champagne, suivi de lotte au beurre blanc et truffes noires du Périgord. The words flowed from her tongue like a symphony, rich and pure. Conversations died completely now. Every eye in the room turned toward her. Her pronunciation was perfect, not rehearsed, not mimicked, but lived. 2 years of academic exchange in Lyon had taught her not just the language, but its rhythm, its grace. When she finished, she returned the menu with a small, composed smile. "I hope that was satisfactory, ma'am." Victoria stood frozen, her face drained of color. Margaret's mouth hung open. Around them, whispers rippled like wind through dry leaves. Robert rose from his seat, breaking the tension. "Victoria," he said quietly, his voice carrying authority. "Perhaps it's time to remember why we're here. Charity, not cruelty." Victoria forced a smile, stammering, "Of course, dear." "Just ensuring the staff understands protocol." But her mask was cracking. Beneath the powdered calm, fear flickered. Jasmine bowed slightly and returned to her duties. As she walked away, Margaret leaned toward Victoria. "Perhaps we misjudged her." Victoria's fingers tightened around her glass. "No," she hissed. "She's pretending. And before this night is over, everyone will see who she really is." What she didn't realize was that Jasmine already had every word, every slur, every insult, recorded with crystal clarity. And that she wasn't just a waitress. She was an academic researcher documenting racial microaggressions for her Harvard thesis. While Victoria plotted her next insult, Jasmine moved with quiet purpose, the calm before a storm that would rewrite both their lives. At the head table, Robert could not tear his gaze away from her. There was a composure in Jasmine that reminded him of something he had lost: integrity. Watching his wife unravel her own mask through cruelty, he felt the first stirrings of something dangerous: guilt. When the gala ended and guests drifted away, Jasmine retreated to the restroom. Alone under the gilded mirror, she exhaled, unclipping the tiny recorder from her pocket. The LED light blinked softly. 23 minutes of pure, unfiltered discrimination and undeniable proof. She stared at her reflection. For years, she had studied how power operated through language, how prejudice hid behind etiquette. Tonight, she had captured it all, raw and real. Then came a gentle knock. "Are you all right?" The voice was low, hesitant, unmistakably Robert Hartwell's. Jasmine hesitated. 1,000 instincts told her not to trust men like him. Yet something in his tone wasn't pity. It was remorse. She opened the door. Robert stood there, hands clasped, expression weighted with shame. "I came to apologize," he said softly. "There's no excuse for what my wife did." Jasmine studied him. His expensive suit, his tired eyes, the slight tremor in his voice. She had met men like him before. Powerful, detached. But rarely had she seen one look so human. "Mr. Hartwell," she said carefully, "you don't need to apologize for her behavior." "Yes, I do," he replied. "Because for 23 years I've allowed it." Their eyes met. Two people from different worlds connected by a moment of truth neither had expected. Robert's voice lowered. "Tell me something honestly. You're not really a waitress, are you?" Jasmine smiled faintly. "What makes you think that? Your French is flawless. Your composure under attack, remarkable. And I recognize intellect when I see it." "I'm an MBA student at Harvard," she admitted quietly. "I took this job to help pay for my last semester." Robert exhaled slowly. "Harvard, my God!" Victoria humiliated a Harvard scholar. "It happens more often than you think," Jasmine said. "She just said out loud what many think quietly." Robert nodded. "That doesn't make it acceptable. In fact, it makes it worse." He hesitated, then leaned slightly closer. "Jasmine, may I make you a proposal?" Jasmine hesitated, studying Robert's expression. A man born into comfort was rarely this earnest. "What kind of proposal?" she asked cautiously. Robert gestured toward the lobby beyond the corridor. "Let's talk somewhere quieter." 15 minutes later, they sat in a secluded corner of the hotel's marble lobby. The music from the ballroom was only a faint echo now, the champagne laughter fading into memory. Between them sat two untouched cups of coffee, steam rising like ghosts of unfinished sentences. "My company, Hartwell Development," Robert began, his voice low, "has been facing serious problems. The board is pushing for authentic diversity reform, not the performative kind that gets written in brochures." He paused, fingers tapping the porcelain cup. "We need someone who understands both the theory and the lived experience of discrimination." "Someone like you?" Jasmine blinked. "You want me to consult for your company?" "Yes. Conduct a full audit. Hiring, promotions, pay equity, culture. Total transparency. I'll make sure you have independence in your findings and are compensated properly." She studied him, wary. "Why me, Mr. Hartwell? You barely know me." "Because," he said quietly, "I watched you endure something most people couldn't. And because I built an empire beside a woman who destroys everything she doesn't understand. I need to fix what I've ignored for too long." Jasmine's fingers brushed the recorder in her pocket. The night had already given her evidence for her thesis, perhaps even a case for civil action. But this was an opening for real change. "Very well," she said. "Send me the proposal. I'll review it." Robert smiled, relief flickering across his face. "You'll hear from my office tomorrow." They rose from the table, and at that precise moment, a shadow approached. Victoria. She moved like a storm in heels, fury hidden beneath the frozen mask of privilege. "Robert, darling," she purred through clenched teeth. "I've been looking for you." Her gaze landed on Jasmine like a dagger. "And here you are, chatting with the help." Robert's expression hardened. "Victoria, I'm offering Miss Washington a consultancy position at the company." For a heartbeat, Victoria simply stared, as if she hadn't heard correctly. Then she laughed, a brittle, hysterical sound. "You must be joking." "Robert, she's a waitress." "She's an MBA student at Harvard," Robert corrected evenly. "Specializing in corporate discrimination." Color drained from Victoria's face. "Harvard?" "Yes. The woman you mocked in front of half of Boston society is one of the most promising young minds in her field." Victoria's mind raced. Damage control, optics, reputation. "Well," she stammered, "even so, perhaps we shouldn't make impulsive decisions based on misplaced sympathy." "It's not sympathy," Robert said. "It's recognition of competence." Jasmine stood silently, letting their words hang between them. Then Victoria turned to her with the false sweetness of someone cornered. Darling, I'm sure you understand. These things happen at social events. Misunderstandings. There was no misunderstanding. Jasmine replied calmly. Your comments were very clear. Victoria forced another smile, thin as paper. Oh, but surely you know context matters. People like us say things we don't mean. Actually, Jasmine interrupted softly, people with my academic background tend to be precise about context, especially when it comes to documented discrimination. The single word documented struck Victoria like a slap. Her throat tightened. Documented? Robert's head turned sharply. Victoria, he said, voice cold, were you recorded? Jasmine said nothing, but her silence was eloquent. Victoria's eyes widened as realization dawned, every word, every insult immortalized. Robert straightened, his decision made. I'll expect your answer tomorrow, Ms. Washington. My assistant will handle the details. He turned toward his wife. Victoria, go home. They walked away, Robert's stride firm, Victoria's trembling. The ballroom lights dimmed behind them as though the evening itself were ending in shame. The next morning, Boston's skyline glimmered coldly under winter sun. Victoria Hartwell woke to her phone buzzing incessantly. 47 missed calls, hundreds of messages. She rubbed her temples, still half asleep, and opened one from Margaret Wellington. Business executive attacks waitress in racial outburst. Viral audio exposes. Boston elite screamed the front page of the Boston Herald. Beneath the headline was a photo of Victoria herself, frozen mid-sneer, a glass of red wine in hand. The accompanying audio clip, 23 minutes of humiliation and venom, was already spreading across every social platform. Victoria's own words echoed from her phone speaker, disembodied and damning. People like you don't belong in civilized settings. Her knees buckled. She fumbled for her robe, rushing downstairs. Robert was in the kitchen reading the Herald with a cup of coffee, expression unreadable. Robert, you have to do something, she gasped. This is a setup. That girl, she's trying to destroy us. That girl, Robert said evenly without looking up, is our new diversity consultant. Victoria blinked. Our what? She started yesterday. After hearing the audio, the board agreed Hartwell Development desperately needs her. Her phone rang again. Patricia Whitmore, president of the prestigious tennis club. Victoria. The board convened an emergency session, Patricia said crisply. Your membership has been revoked effective immediately. That behavior is incompatible with our values. The line went dead. Then came messages from social media, followers vanishing by the hundreds. Comments piling beneath her photos. Disgusting woman. Privilege without humanity. Justice served in 4K, Margaret called next, voice trembling. Charles canceled the office renovation. He says associating with you is toxic. I'm ruined because of you, Victoria. By noon, Victoria was pacing the mansion like a ghost trapped in daylight. Robert, please. You're my husband. You can fix this. Call your lawyers, make her take it down. He folded the newspaper, finally meeting her eyes. Cold, tired. There's nothing to take down, Victoria. You weren't framed. You were recorded. Her jaw quivered. You're abandoning me? Because of a waitress? Because of a Harvard student you attacked out of racism, he corrected. Because I've spent 23 years pretending not to see who you really are. The phone rang again. Dr. Harrison, director of the charitable foundation where Victoria served as vice president. Victoria, the board has voted unanimously to remove you from all roles, he said coolly. Your comments were reprehensible. Good day. Click. Silence. Victoria sank into a chair, breath shallow. In less than 24 hours, her social kingdom had turned to ash. Friendships vanished, endorsements withdrawn, invitations canceled. Even her hairdresser texted fully booked indefinitely. Robert stood retrieving his coat. You know the irony? Jasmine didn't need revenge. She just let your own words do the work. He started upstairs, speaking over his shoulder. My lawyers will send the divorce papers tomorrow. The house is yours. The life isn't. Robert, please, she cried, voice cracking. Don't throw away our marriage over one mistake. He paused at the landing. It wasn't one mistake, Victoria. It was you. Every day. Every snide remark you thought was harmless. The door closed behind him with the finality of judgment. Across town, Jasmine sat at a sleek conference table in Hartwell Development's headquarters. She wore a navy blue suit that matched her calm authority. Around her, executives shifted uncomfortably as Robert introduced her. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Jasmine Washington, our new Director of Diversity and Inclusion. She will have full autonomy to examine and reform our corporate culture. Polite applause followed, tentative but sincere. Jasmine smiled gently. Thank you. My goal isn't punishment, but transformation. I believe companies succeed when every voice is valued, not just the loudest ones. After the meeting, Robert caught her in the hallway. You handled that beautifully, he said. I've had practice, she replied, smiling. That evening, while Jasmine reviewed her new office overlooking the city skyline, she opened her email. Hundreds of messages of support. Students, journalists, activists. Her story had become a symbol, not of scandal but of strength. Meanwhile, in the mansion that had once hosted lavish charity galas, Victoria sat in darkness, scrolling through endless headlines about her own downfall. Each notification was a nail sealing her isolation. Margaret had stopped replying. The tennis club expelled her. The charity revoked her position. Even her driver had resigned. For the first time in her life, there was no audience left to applaud her cruelty. She walked to the mirror and barely recognized the reflection. The flawless makeup couldn't hide the exhaustion, the loneliness, the collapse of the image she had spent decades curating. In another corner of the city, Jasmine placed her recorder inside a safe and locked it. The past was documented, preserved, but her focus was no longer revenge. It was reform. She drafted a new initiative for Hartwell Development, mandatory bias training, equitable hiring pipelines, community scholarships. Real steps toward justice. Her phone vibrated. An email, subject, proposal draft, slid onto her screen with the quiet of a future arriving without fanfare. She opened it, scanned the terms, and felt, more than thought, the shape of rooms where people like her had been told to enter only to clean. Another message landed as she paused under a streetlight. A text from a number saved under Mom. How was it? You okay? Amara typed. Fine. Tiring. I'll call in the morning. Love you. She added a heart, then deleted it, then added it again. Love is sometimes an edit you make twice. At her apartment, she set the recorder on the table beside her laptop and a small succulent, stubborn enough to survive grad school. She brewed tea that tasted faintly of mint and discipline, opened a new document and titled it, Discretion as Weapon, Microaggressions in Elite Philanthropic Spaces. She began to type, not as a victim but as a cartographer. Her cursor paused. The night pressed one ear to her window. Somewhere in a penthouse 10 blocks south and 40 stories up, Evelyn Whitmore stared at her own reflection, looking for the part of herself that could still pass for the heroine in a story where she had clearly been cast as the antagonist. She reached for her phone, scrolled, watched, listened. To nothing, to gossip, to news that had not yet found a headline. At 2 a.m., Elliot stood in his office, lights off, the city drawing constellations on the glass. He reread the email he had sent Amara and felt something that was not absolution, but might be its ancestor, intention. At 3, Amara fell asleep at her desk, cheek on her forearm. The document full of beginnings. The recorder sat silent and full on the table, small, red, and exact. The kind of star you can hold. Morning would sort the rest. Replies and replies to those replies. Offers, terms, meetings that pretended to be conversations. For now, the city kept its secrets, good and ugly, and the museum slept under its beaded chandeliers like a queen learning how to apologize. And the rip on the red satin? Amara would mend it again at dawn, this time with a stitch so careful that if you weren't looking for the scar, you'd never know where the story started. But the fabric would remember, the way people do, and the memory would make it stronger where it had once been meant to fail.